5 years of 90-hour weeks at a Chicago wealth management firm, never missed a single quarterly review. Then on the morning, I was supposed to close our largest portfolio acquisition. I got terminated by someone who'd never passed the Series 7 exam just because his last name matched the one etched in brass on the lobby wall. What he didn't realize was that I was the only reason 43 high-net-worth families stayed, and he just lit the fuse on his own dynasty's destruction. My name is Rebecca Torres. At 38, I'd built my entire professional identity around being the most trusted senior wealth advisor at Kensington Private Capital. The office smelled like mahogany polish and old money. 32nd floor of a limestone tower on Michigan Avenue, surrounded by law firms and family offices, all convinced their particular approach to preserving generational wealth was superior. My desk was in the corner office I'd earned after year 3. Walnut furniture. Bloomberg terminal glowing green. A crystal paperweight from the Harrington family after I'd saved their estate from a catastrophic tax liability. Framed photos of client events, weddings I'd attended, graduations I'd been invited to. The accumulated trust of someone who'd become part of her clients' lives, not just their portfolios. I'd been at Kensington for 5 years. 5 years of building relationships that transcended transactions. 5 years of knowing which client needed a phone call on their anniversary, which one worried about their grandson's spending habits, which one still grieved a spouse lost to cancer and needed someone to listen before discussing asset allocation. My team was small but exceptional. Michael was my associate, technically, but really more of a partner. 15 years in private banking. The kind of analyst who could spot irregularities in a trust document the way a jeweler spots flaws in a diamond. He handled the numbers. I handled the people. Together. We'd never lost a client. Catherine ran our estate planning coordination. Brilliant at navigating the intersection of family dynamics and tax law. She'd prevented 3 family feuds just by asking the right questions at the right time. Robert handled our compliance documentation. Former SEC examiner, obsessive about regulations, the reason we'd never had a single audit finding in 5 years. He'd once stayed until midnight reviewing a single transaction because something felt off. His instinct was right. It always was. Patricia coordinated client communications. She knew every birthday, every grandchild's name, every preference for how and when clients wanted to be contacted. She was the reason our clients felt like family instead of account numbers. They weren't just colleagues. They were the reason I stayed. The reason I worked 90-hour weeks without complaint, because we were protecting something that mattered. People's legacies, people's futures, people's dreams for their children and grandchildren. That Wednesday morning started like any other. Market briefing at 6:30, desk by 7, reviewing the Whitfield family portfolio acquisition for what had to be the 40th time. $92 million in assets under management. Not our biggest relationship, but significant enough that I'd personally shepherded it through 8 months of delicate negotiations. The Whitfields were old Chicago money, manufacturing fortune built by the great-grandfather, third-generation wealth, which meant third-generation complexity, 12 family members with competing interests, 3 trusts with overlapping provisions. One patriarch trying to maintain control while slowly losing his faculties. I'd spent 2 years building that relationship. Dinners at their Lake Forest estate. Meetings with their attorneys. Careful conversations about succession planning that never felt like conversations about mortality. The email notification appeared at 9:15. Not from my direct supervisor, Jonathan, who was in New York for a conference all week. From Preston Kensington III. Please come to my office immediately. Preston Kensington III, 29 years old, Princeton legacy admission, son of our founder and majority shareholder. He'd been installed as chief operating officer 10 weeks ago after what the firm newsletter called an extensive executive search. The search that somehow missed every qualified candidate and landed on the owner's grandson, who'd spent the last 4 years finding himself at various European business schools that didn't require actual attendance. Let me tell you about Preston Kensington III. He arrived at the firm with the confidence of someone who had never earned anything in his life. Bespoke suits from London. A watch collection worth more than most of our junior staff made in a decade. The kind of smile that came from never hearing the word no. His first week. He called an all-hands meeting to introduce his vision, spoke for 2 hours about disruption and innovation and democratizing wealth management, used the phrase paradigm shift 11 times. I counted because I had nothing else to do while he wasted our client meeting time. His second week, he reorganized the entire advisory structure without consulting anyone who actually managed money, put junior associates on complex estate planning, put senior advisors on basic account maintenance. When I pointed out this would destroy our service quality, he smiled and said we need fresh perspectives in key relationships. Rebecca. I spent the next 8 weeks undoing his damage while he attended fintech conferences in Miami and Austin. Not to learn, to network, to be seen, to collect photos for his Instagram where he positioned himself as a thought leader in wealth management, despite never having managed a single dollar of client money. His idea of leadership was emails. Lots of emails. Emails asking for status updates on things he didn't understand. Emails scheduling meetings about meetings. Emails at 3 a.m. because he'd just returned from a club and had a brilliant idea about cryptocurrency integration. The actual work happened despite him. When Preston was at dinners with potential investors or flying to his family's compound in Aspen, when the people who actually understood fiduciary duty could focus without being interrupted to explain basic concepts, he had a habit of asking questions in client meetings that revealed he didn't understand our own investment philosophy. I learned to position myself beside him so I could redirect before the silence became embarrassing. He took credit for everything, every retained client, every successful estate transition, every crisis averted. When the Harrington family renewed their advisory agreement, he sent a firm-wide email about his strategic vision for client relationships. Used the word "we" 19 times. Never mentioned my name once. I was the one who'd spent 60 hours that month restructuring their charitable giving strategy. He was the one who'd mispronounced their daughter's name at the signing dinner. But Preston was untouchable. His grandfather owned 61% of the firm. The board was handpicked. The other partners owed their positions to the Kensington family. The kind of privilege that fails upward because removing it would mean confronting the dynasty that founded everything. So I kept my head down, did my work, believed that eventually someone would notice the difference between performance and pedigree. That was my mistake. I saved my documents, straightened my blazer, walked the long corridor to the corner office that used to belong to our chief investment officer, a man with 35 years of fiduciary experience. Preston had redecorated. Gone were the market analysis charts and framed certifications, replaced by abstract art and a meditation corner with crystals. He didn't look up when I knocked. Sit. The chair across from his desk was deliberately low, a power play I'd seen in business school case studies about what not to do. Preston was scrolling through his phone, Italian loafers propped on the antique desk his grandfather had imported from England. Rebecca. He finally acknowledged me, setting down his phone like it physically pained him. We need to discuss your future here. Is there an issue with the Whitfield acquisition? I can walk you through the timeline if it's not about any specific client. He leaned back, fingers steepled like he'd watched too many films about Wall Street. It's about cultural fit, dynamic synergy, the direction we're taking the firm, cultural fit. I'd generated more revenue than any other non-partner for 5 consecutive years. My client retention rate was 97%. I'd personally designed the family office integration framework that powered our entire high net worth practice. But sure, let's talk about synergy. I'm not following. Look, you're competent. No one's saying you're not competent. The way he said it made competent sound like an insult. But Kensington is evolving. We need team players who understand innovation, disruption, people who think outside the box. I bit back the urge to mention that wealth management succeeded by thinking inside very specific fiduciary and regulatory boxes. That's literally what clients paid us for. That's literally what kept us out of prison. What exactly are you saying? Preston. Today is your last day. Security will escort you out after you sign this. He slid a packet across the desk. Non-disclosure agreement, non-compete clause, 3 months severance if I went quietly. You're terminating me the week before Whitfield closes. Vanessa will handle the transition. He checked his phone again. Already bored with dismantling my career. Vanessa, his girlfriend. The junior analyst who'd started 7 weeks ago and still couldn't calculate a simple Sharpe ratio. I'd caught her copying model portfolios from a competitor's public filings. Vanessa doesn't have the certifications. She legally cannot provide investment advice to accredited investors. That's no longer your concern. His smile was all teeth. No warmth. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. And Rebecca, the NDA is non-negotiable. You discuss any client portfolios, any proprietary strategies, and we'll bury you in litigation. Grandfather's legal team has very deep pockets. I stood, kept my face neutral. 5 years. 5 years of skipped vacations. Working through a kidney stone because the Morrison estate couldn't wait. Building relationships with 43 families who trusted me with their legacies. 5 years of creating frameworks, processes, and client experiences that this firm ran on. My name wasn't on a single marketing brochure, but my fingerprints were on every major relationship. 1 hour. Preston repeated, already typing on his phone. Leave your credentials with security. I walked back to my office in a daze. Through the glass walls of our advisory floor, I could see my colleagues avoiding eye contact. Word traveled fast in wealth management. Someone had probably already texted the compliance group chat. The one management didn't know about. The one where people shared job listings and complained about Preston. The Persian carpet felt different under my feet. The same carpet I'd walked for 5 years. The same carpet that had absorbed countless difficult conversations with clients about mortality, about family, about what really mattered. My office was exactly as I'd left it. Bloomberg Terminal still showing the Whitfield asset allocation. Everything optimized. Everything ready for signing. Everything perfect. The crystal paperweight from the Harringtons. A Mont Blanc pen the Castellanos had given me after I'd helped their son structure his first trust. A photo of my parents at my MBA graduation. The accumulated artifacts of someone who'd become part of her clients' lives. I started packing. It didn't take long, 5 years, and everything that mattered fit in a single banker's box. The paperweight, the pen, the photo. A few leather notebooks filled with client notes that existed nowhere else. The security guard who appeared was someone I'd actually helped once. His name was Jerome Washington. His mother had needed advice on her pension distribution 3 years ago. I'd spent 2 hours after work explaining her options, no charge, no obligation, just because it was the right thing to do. Ms. Torres, he said quietly. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry about this. It's not your fault. Jerome, no. But it's not right either. He paused. My mother still talks about you. You know. Says you're the only person in this building who ever treated her like a person instead of a problem. I didn't know what to say to that. He walked beside me, not behind me. A small act of dignity that I appreciated more than he knew. At the elevator, he stopped. Whatever you do next, he said, you're going to be fine. People like you always land on your fate. It's people like him who fall eventually. I wanted to believe that. I wasn't sure I did. Not yet. I handed him my credentials. Picked up my banker's box. Walked past the oil paintings and the marble reception desk and the brass letters spelling Kensington Private Capital. Outside. Chicago's bitter wind matched my mood perfectly. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 30 minutes. Not crying. Not yet. Just processing. 5 years of my life. 5 years of building something I believed in. Gone because some trust fund heir wanted to install his girlfriend in my position. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need to ask you something, if you're finding this story compelling. Hit that subscribe button and like this video. Trust me, what I'm about to describe is worth your time. The first call came that afternoon. I was sitting in my apartment, still in my work clothes, staring at Lake Michigan through my window, when my personal phone rang, a number I recognized immediately, the Whitfields. Specifically, their family patriarch, Edward Whitfield himself, the man whose $92 million relationship I'd been about to formalize, Rebecca. What the hell is happening? I just received an email saying you're no longer with Kensington and some person named Vanessa is our new advisor. His voice was sharp, not angry at me. Angry at the situation. And beneath that, something else. Fear. The fear of an 83-year-old man who'd just lost the person he trusted with his family's future. I took a breath, tried to figure out what I could say that wouldn't violate my NDA. I was let go this morning. Let go. We're 5 days from signing. You've been managing this transition for 8 months. You personally came to our home 12 times. You know my children's names, their spouses, their concerns. I know. There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that carries the weight of decades. Rebecca, I'm going to be direct. We chose Kensington because of you. Your expertise, your integrity, your understanding of what this family needs. This Vanessa person just sent me an email asking about our risk tolerance. We discussed that in our first meeting in January. It's in the proposal you wrote. I didn't know what to say. Legally, I couldn't advise him. Ethically, I couldn't abandon him. Professionally, I was stuck in between. Look, I don't know what happened over there, Edward continued, and frankly, I don't care about their internal politics. My family's legacy isn't a pawn in some corporate drama. I need to know, what are your plans? I haven't really thought that far ahead. It's been about 7 hours. Think faster, because if you land somewhere with family office capabilities, I want to have a conversation. The Whitfields follow trust, not letterheads. 3 generations have learned that lesson. He hung up. I stared at my phone, the screen showing a call duration of 6 minutes and 12 seconds. 6 minutes that changed everything. It rang again. Different number this time. The Castellanos family. Their eldest son, Marco, who I'd helped structure his first trust when he turned 30. Same question, same concern, same underlying message. Then the Harringtons, then the Okonkwo family, then the Goldsteins, then the Petrovichs, then the Nakamuras, then 5 more I barely had time to process. By 10 p.m., I'd received calls from 14 of my clients, 14 families worth a combined $370 million in assets under management, all asking the same question: where are you going? And can we follow? I didn't sleep that night, not because of anxiety, because of possibility. The next morning, I called Michael, my former associate. He was still at the office but had heard what happened. Preston's lost his mind, Michael said, his voice low like he was hiding in a conference room. Half the advisory team is updating their LinkedIn profiles. The Whitfield signing is a disaster. Vanessa apparently asked their attorney what a generation-skipping trust was. In the meeting, in front of the family, I winced. That was exactly the kind of mistake I'd warned about in my transition documentation. The documentation Vanessa apparently hadn't read. Rebecca, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I've had 14 client calls since yesterday. 14. They want to know where I'm landing. Michael was quiet for a moment. You know what this means, right? If you go somewhere else, if you take those relationships with you, I'm not taking anything. I'm not violating any agreements. I'm not soliciting anyone. If clients choose to follow, that's their decision. But Preston will see it as theft. Preston can see it however he wants, but relationships aren't property. Trust isn't something you can transfer in a termination meeting. Fiduciary duty isn't a line item you can reassign to your girlfriend. I spent the next week doing something I'd never had time for when I was working 90-hour weeks. I thought about what I wanted, about what I was worth, about whether I wanted to go back to being someone else's invisible foundation. I also did something else. I documented. Not anything proprietary, not anything that violated my NDA, but my own knowledge, my own methodologies, the frameworks I'd developed over 18 years in wealth management, the approach to client relationships that had earned me a 97% retention rate. I realized something during those quiet days. Preston thought he'd fired an employee, but employees are replaceable. What he'd actually done was remove the keystone from an arch of trust. See? High net worth clients don't actually buy investment management. They buy relationships. They buy the confidence that when their daughter calls at midnight because her husband wants a prenup, someone competent will answer. They buy years of proven discretion. They buy trust. And trust isn't something you can transfer in a termination meeting. Trust isn't something you can reassign to your girlfriend. Trust lives in the history of problems solved and confidence is kept. 43 families had my personal cell phone number. Not the firm's reception line, my personal number. Because over 5 years, I'd proven that I would answer, that I would protect their interests, that I would treat their concerns as my concerns. Preston didn't understand this. He thought clients stayed because of the Kensington brand, because of the marble lobby, because of the name on the building. He was wrong. They stayed because of me, and now I was gone. On day 9, I got a call from a name I didn't recognize. Margaret Chen, managing partner at Meridian Family Office, one of Kensington's competitors. Smaller, but growing fast. Reputation for integrity over pretension. Miss Torres, she said. I've heard interesting things about you, very interesting things. Specifically, I've heard that 43 families are currently reconsidering their advisory relationships, and that your name keeps coming up in those conversations. I didn't respond to that directly. What I'm about to propose, she continued, is unusual. But so is this situation. We'd like to offer you a position, not as an employee, as a partner. Equity stake. Your own practice within our firm. Full autonomy over client relationships and investment philosophy. I listened. We're not asking you to bring clients, she clarified. That would be legally and ethically problematic. We're asking you to be available if clients independently choose to transition. There's a difference. There was a crucial one. I spent 4 days reviewing their offer, their financials, their investment approach, their compliance history. Then I said yes. The announcement went out on a Thursday. Simple LinkedIn post. Excited to announce I'm joining Meridian Family Office as partner and head of private client services. Within 3 hours, my phone started ringing. The Whitfields were first. Edward called personally. We've initiated our termination notice with Kensington, he said. 60-day transition period. On day 61, we'd like to discuss an engagement with Meridian. The Castellanos were second. Same story, different timeline. By Monday, I had 19 formal inquiries. By the following Friday, 31. And by the end of the second month, 38 of my 43 former clients had either terminated their Kensington relationships or initiated the process. I didn't solicit them. I didn't even reach out. They came to me. Because that's how trust works. It's not about contracts or non-competes or threatening letters from attorneys. It's about years of showing up, years of answering the phone at midnight. Years of understanding someone's family well enough to anticipate their needs before they articulate them. Preston Kensington thought he was terminating an employee. He was actually terminating the only person his clients trusted. The collapse happened faster than anyone expected. Week 1 after my departure, the Whitfield signing imploded. Vanessa had misunderstood the tax implications of their generation-skipping provisions. Their attorneys caught the error. The family withdrew from negotiations entirely. $92 million in potential assets, gone in a single meeting. But it wasn't just the money, it was the reputation. The Whitfields had been with Chicago wealth management circles for 80 years. When they talked, people listened, and they were talking. Week 2. 3 more families announced they were reviewing their relationships. Then 4 more. Then the dominoes started falling faster than Preston could send apologetic emails. I heard from Michael that Preston's response to the crisis was to call more meetings. Meetings about client retention. Meetings about service quality. Meetings about the meetings they'd had about service quality. Meanwhile, actual problems went unsolved because the people who knew how to solve them were either gone or too busy attending meetings. Week 3. Michael quit, then Catherine from estate planning, then Robert, Patricia, and 2 junior analysts. The people who actually knew how things worked were leaving, fast. Michael called me the night he submitted his resignation. I couldn't do it anymore. He said, Preston wanted me to blame you for the Whitfield failure. Wanted me to write a memo saying you'd left inadequate documentation. I told him the documentation was 300 pages and perfectly clear. He told me I wasn't being a team player. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Don't be. It was the push I needed. Catherine and I are starting a boutique estate planning practice. Nothing that competes with where you landed. Different client segment. But we're out. We're finally out. I understood that feeling. The relief of no longer pretending. Of no longer carrying an institution that didn't deserve to be carried. Week 4. Kensington's largest remaining client, the Morrison Family Trust, sent a formal letter expressing concerns about service quality and requesting an emergency meeting. Preston's response was to threaten them with early termination penalties. They responded by hiring a law firm to review their fiduciary claims. Apparently, Preston had learned nothing. When clients express concern, you listen, you apologize, you fix things, you don't threaten them with legal action. Especially not when you're the one with fiduciary obligations. Week 6. The financial press started noticing. The Wall Street Journal ran a piece about family office transitions. Kensington was mentioned, not by name initially, but the details were specific enough that everyone in the industry knew. Week 7. The board called an emergency meeting. Preston's grandfather, William Kensington Sr., flew in from his retirement estate in Palm Beach. What I heard later, through former colleagues, was that the meeting lasted 5 hours. William Kensington Sr. was 81 years old. He'd founded Kensington Private Capital in 1972, built it from nothing. Survived the 1987 crash. Survived the 2008 crisis. Survived every challenge the industry had thrown at him. He'd stepped back 3 years ago, thinking his legacy was secure. Thinking his grandson was ready. Thinking the firm he'd built would outlast him. He was wrong about all of it. From what I heard, William spent the first 2 hours of that board meeting listening, just listening, as partner after partner explained how 38 families had left in 9 weeks. As the CFO presented revenue projections that looked like a cliff. As the head of compliance described the potential regulatory exposure from Vanessa's unlicensed advice. Then William asked one question. Where is Preston? Preston, apparently, was at a wellness retreat in Sedona. He'd left 2 days before. Hadn't thought the board meeting was important enough to attend. William's response to that information was not recorded in the minutes. But 4 people who were present said he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The disappointment was louder than any shouting could have been. Week 9. Preston was removed as COO. The press release called it a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. Everyone in the industry knew what it actually meant. Week 11, Kensington announced they were exploring strategic options. Corporate speak for, we're looking for someone to acquire us before we collapse entirely. Week 14. A larger national firm acquired what was left of Kensington for roughly 20 cents on the dollar. Most staff were let go. The name was dissolved. The client relationships were absorbed, and the Kensington brand disappeared entirely after 52 years. Total elapsed time from my termination to complete firm failure 103 days. I didn't plan it. I didn't orchestrate it. I didn't do anything except leave and be available when clients came looking. But sometimes that's enough. Sometimes the absence of a single person reveals how hollow an institution really was. Meanwhile, at Meridian, things were going very differently. The 38 clients who followed me represented $420 million in assets under management, a 71% increase in Meridian's private client business overnight. We went from regional boutique to serious competitor. Margaret had been right to take a chance on me. But I'd also been right to take a chance on Meridian. They were different from Kensington. No nepotism, no politics, no founders' grandchildren who'd never managed a portfolio making decisions about investment philosophy. Just competence, just integrity. Just people who understood that in wealth management, your reputation is your product. My first month, I proposed a complete redesign of their client onboarding process. At Kensington, a proposal like that would have died in committee. Too ambitious. Too different from how we've always done things. Too threatening to people who'd built careers on the status quo. Margaret approved it in one meeting. "You understand this business better than anyone I've hired," she said. "I'm not going to second-guess you. Just keep me informed on progress." That was it. No micromanagement, no weekly status meetings about meetings. No request to justify decisions I'd already thought through more carefully than anyone else could. Just trust. The difference was profound. At Kensington, I'd spent perhaps 30% of my time on actual client work. The rest was politics, documentation for people who'd never read it, meetings that accomplished nothing, managing upward to protect my team from bad decisions made by people who didn't understand our work. At Meridian, I spent 80% of my time on clients. The work I actually cared about, the work that actually mattered. I built a team. Carefully, interviewed every candidate myself, asked not just about skills, but about values, about how they handled difficult family dynamics, about what they did when no one was watching. Catherine joined first, 4 months after I started. Her non-compete had expired and she was tired of the boutique grind. Michael joined next, then Robert, then Patricia, who'd have been freelancing and hating every minute of it. Within 18 months, my practice had grown to 47 client families, 9 new ones who had heard about our work and reached out. Word travels in wealth management. Integrity gets noticed. Margaret Chen called me into her office on my 2-year anniversary. "Rebecca," she said, "when I brought you on, I took a calculated risk. I knew you were talented. I knew you had relationships. But I didn't know if you could build something." And she smiled. The kind of smile that comes from genuine satisfaction. "The partnership voted this morning. You're being offered a seat on the executive committee, and we'd like to discuss succession planning. I'm retiring in 4 years. We need someone to lead this firm into the next generation." I didn't know what to say 2 years ago. I was packing a banker's box while a security guard apologized. Now I was being asked to run a firm. "You've earned this," Margaret continued, "not through politics, not through connections, through the only thing that matters in this business: trust, client retention, team development, the metrics that actually matter." She slid a folder across her desk. Inside was the offer: equity stake, profit participation, a seat at every table that mattered. I thought about Preston Kensington. Last I'd heard, he was working at a cryptocurrency startup in Miami, the kind of place that didn't verify credentials, the kind of place where being a Kensington still meant something, even if that something was rapidly depreciating. I'd seen his LinkedIn profile once, chief strategy officer at some blockchain venture. His posts were full of the same buzzwords: disruption, innovation, paradigm shifts. Some people never learn. They just find new audiences to fool. I thought about William Kensington Sr. He'd sent me a letter, about 8 months after Kensington collapsed, handwritten, 3 pages, apologizing, explaining that he hadn't known what his grandson was doing, that he'd trusted the wrong person to protect what he'd built, that he'd spent 52 years building a reputation his grandson had destroyed in 103 days. I'd written back, brief but not cold. I understood the pain of watching something you'd created get destroyed by someone who didn't understand its value. I understood the particular agony of family disappointment. Some lessons can only be learned through loss. I thought about Vanessa. She'd reached out too, surprisingly. asked if I'd consider writing a recommendation for a compliance certification program she was applying to. She wanted to actually learn the regulations she'd been pretending to understand. I'd said yes, because that's what professionals do. They help people grow, even people who hurt them. Holding grudges is exhausting. Building something is more satisfying. My phone buzzed. Text from Michael. Whitfield family just called. They want to discuss adding their grandchildren's trust to our management. Meetings Friday if you're available. I typed back, I'm available. Send me the brief. Then I looked out my office window. Chicago skyline. Lake Michigan in the distance. The same view I'd had at Kensington, just from a different angle. 5 years ago. I was an invisible foundation, the person who made things work while other people took credit. Now I had equity, a seat at the table, a team that trusted me, clients who followed me not because of contracts, but because of relationships built over years of proving myself. The conference room was waiting. 47 families, depending on the advice and stewardship I'd dedicated my career to providing. A firm that valued integrity over pedigree. My assistant knocked. Miss Torres, the new associate orientation is ready. They're waiting for your welcome address. I straightened my blazer. The same blazer I'd worn the day Preston fired me. I'd kept it on purpose. A reminder. Tell them I'll be right there. As I walked to the conference room, I passed the wall where we'd hung the framed article. Meridian Family Office named fastest growing wealth manager in Midwest. No mention of Kensington. No mention of Preston. No mention of the 38 families who'd followed me. History is written by those who survive. And we hadn't just survived. We'd built something better. The conference room was full of fresh faces, young advisors and analysts, eager to start their careers at a firm that valued merit over names. I looked at them and saw myself 5 years ago, confident in my abilities, naive about politics, unaware how quickly everything could change, unaware that the biggest threat to a career isn't incompetence. It's someone else's incompetence combined with power they didn't earn. Good afternoon, I began. Let me tell you about the most important lesson you'll ever learn in this industry. It's not about knowing the markets. Algorithms can do that now. It's not about AUM or fee schedules or performance metrics. It's about trust. Lose that and you lose everything. Keep it and you'll build something that lasts. I paused. Let the words settle. I used to think technical competence was enough, that if you just did good work, people would notice. That's true, but only partly. Competence earns you respect. Trust earns you loyalty. And loyalty, the kind that follows you through doors and across firms, that's the only currency that matters. The eager faces leaned in, taking notes, recording on their phones, hungry for wisdom they couldn't get from textbooks. Someone terminated me once. I continued. Terminated me because I didn't fit his vision of what the firm should be. What he didn't understand was that I wasn't just an employee. I was the reason his clients stayed. When I left, they left, not because I asked them to. Because trust isn't something you can transfer in a termination meeting. I looked at the young faces. Some of them would go on to build great things. Some of them would face their own Preston Kensingtons. Some of them would have to choose between loyalty to an institution and loyalty to themselves. The lesson isn't about revenge, I said. It's about understanding what you're actually worth, not your salary, not your title, your relationships, your reputation. The track record you build one family at a time. I glanced at my phone. Text from Margaret. Partnership dinner tonight. Announcement at 8. The board voted unanimously. The Chicago wealth management community was about to get another surprise. The woman terminated for lacking cultural fit would be running one of its most respected firms. I smiled at the new associates. So build relationships. I told them. Protect legacies. Be the person families call at midnight because they trust you with what matters most. And if someone ever tells you that you don't fit their culture, remember this. Cultures can be wrong. Your integrity is yours. Take it wherever you go. The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. Thank you for your attention, I said. Now go build something worth protecting. Then protect it with everything you have. The applause followed me out of the room, down the hallway with its client testimonials, past the advisory floor where my team was solving problems I used to solve alone, into the elevator that would take me to the executive suite. 5 years ago, I was packing a banker's box. Today, I was signing partnership agreements. Not because I was lucky, not because I played politics, because I understood something Preston Kensington never learned. In this industry, you're only as valuable as the trust you've built, and trust, real trust, follows people. Not firms, not logos, people. My phone buzzed again. Calendar reminder. Whitfield Trust Expansion Meeting. Friday, 2 p.m. I smiled, pressed the elevator button. Ready to keep building. Thanks for listening to this story. If it resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you hit that subscribe button and left a comment. I'm curious. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who didn't understand what you brought to the table? Have you ever had to walk away from something you built? Have you ever watched someone destroy something through arrogance that they didn't build through effort? Tell me about it. I read every comment. And remember, your integrity is yours. Take it wherever you go. No one can fire that.